No, you won't go to jail for eating or drinking your favorite soda, ice cream or Oreo cookie. We hope so. However, refined sugar is proving to be somehow addictive and developing horrible consequences for consumers' health. Due to the excessive increase in its intake, some governments are seriously considering regulating its use and consumption. Also, many consumer organizations are pushing such regulation. To analyze if this is the right strategy, we must start by seeing that the increase in the consumption of sugar comes from its delicious flavor and all the recipes we can use to cook with it. The wide availability of sugar also makes it possible to include it in almost any recipe. Ironically, it is exactly what is resulting so disastrous. The food industry seems to be abusing the versatility of sugar as well as the natural preference of the consumers. They are adding huge amounts of it in its processed food. But sugar has always been around us and the body and brain need it to execute some of its functions. That brings the main discussions about how sugar should be regulated. Is it necessary to go to the point of labeling it like a drug? Should people be free to decide whether or not to ingest sugar and the amount of it? And is it really addictive as some people claim? Sugar is a natural element that is present in plants and many fruits and vegetables. It means that you don't need refined sugar to get the provision that your body requires. In fact, for millions of years, man obtained it from different sources such as honey, carbohydrates that transform in sugar into the body and thousands of plants. Although the refined version of sugar was already known in Asia and India about 2000 years ago. The industrial process in this side of the world began just a couple of centuries ago. At first, it was a very exclusive product only accessible by the richest people. Then, the discovery of the American continent by Europeans increased production. The land was fertile and the entire world was demanding more sugar. Industrialization helped to reach the level of production and make it available to everyone. Drugs are substances that affect chemicals and composition of the brain and contribute to modify feelings and behaviors in short and long-term periods. They can be medical drugs oriented to help in the recovery of physical or mental illness, or recreational drugs like cocaine and marijuana. Both types of drugs are regulated by governments and strict laws. The administration of medical drugs is regulated according to the prescription of doctors, and dosages are limited to what they order. On the other hand, recreational drugs are commonly prohibited and their consumption may send people to jail. Sugar is an essential element for the body. Besides, it has numerous uses that include cosmetic, health and many more. Hence, its regulation should be like medical drugs, with limitations in the consumption but never eliminating it. Although you can find sugar in almost any plant, the highest amounts are found in sugar cane and sugar beets. Many countries produce sugar, but the biggest production comes from Brazil, with about 41% of the worldwide supply. Sugar is an essential nutrient for the body and brain. When you consume sugar, it breaks down into glucose, also known as blood sugar. When it reaches the cells, it transforms into energy that several organs use to execute their functions, such as temperature regulation or muscle contraction. If you do not eat sugar, some organs can provisionally get some energy from fat and proteins. But the brain can't do it. Instead, it only relies on sugar as its source of energy. Brain gets it as glucose and receives it from blood. Since the brain is full of neurons and nerves, it demands more energy than any other part of the body. In other words, if you want optimal level to think, memorize and learn, you need a proper consumption of sugar. According to the World Health Organization, you should consume about 10% of the average caloric intake, which is an average of 1,500 to 2,000 for women and 2,000 to 2,500 for men. That represents about 20 to 25 grams per day. It proves how easy it is to surpass this amount. The truth is that processed food usually contains a lot more of that. For instance, a cupcake or an energy drink may contain half of that amount. Hence, most people overcome the limits of sugar. You do not need recreational drugs to survive. In fact, none of your organs or body parts need any of that kind of drugs to do it. Instead, they only accelerate processes in the body and develop negative consequences. When it comes to medical drugs, they are only necessary to treat illness, and most of the time their use is provisional. To differentiate refined sugar from natural sugar, like that found in fruits, the key element is the speed of absorption. Overall, refined sugar is not toxic or harmful for the body, but when we consume it, our body absorbs it rapidly and sends alerts to produce insulin to process it and turn it into glucose. As this process is so fast, when we consume a lot of sugar, our body needs to produce a lot more insulin in record time. The insulin is in charge of distributing the glucose to different body organs, and what is left goes to the bloodstream. So, when we consume too much sugar, a lot of sugar cannot be processed and goes to the blood. That excess causes different diseases. When it is natural sugar, the process is slower, and the fact that we consume it along with fruit also adds fiber that makes digestion slower too. This is why it is better to consume raw fruit instead of juice fruits. When the fruit is presented as a juice, it doesn't include the fiber that slows down the digestion and glucose processes. When the body doesn't have enough time to process the sugar and it comes in big quantities, the blood accumulates it and damages some organs. Even the brain that needs it so much can get damaged when the sugar exceeds the amount it requires. The excess of sugar is associated with cardiac disease, loss of memory, obesity, and many other diseases. First of all, according to some studies carried out by the University of North Carolina in the United States, at least 68% of the products found in a common grocery store included sugar, although some of them are as abused as snacks, sodas, or some sauces. You can find sugar even in your salad and spaghetti sauce, canned soup, cereals, cheese, meat products, and many more. Sometimes it is more difficult to detect it because the manufacturers do not use the word sugar, but others like juice concentrates, syrup, and similar. All over the world, governments are regulating the consumption of sugar, and a common strategy is to force manufacturers to include the exact amount in the label. This is how consumers can detect and choose what is best for them. But it also requires educated and responsible people willing to conduct their research. The importance of this question is because it will help to determine the similarity of sugar with drugs. We must start by saying that the strict regulation for drugs comes from its addictive characteristics. When some people consume it, they get addicted and its use damages the brain and other organs of the body. Sugar and drugs share that both of them activate the production of dopamine in the brain, which is a function of reward and make people want to get more and more. But many other experiences also affect that area. Some of them are the winning experiences, pleasurable music, and many more. In fact, other types of food can stimulate that effect too, and many studies suggest that the sugar effect is not as uncontrollable as that caused by heroin, cocaine, or marijuana. On the other hand, the nocive effects of sugar are not as hard as those from drugs. Even brain damage is still being researched and results are not conclusive. Besides, they have long-term effects and are not as fast as drugs. To control the sugar intake, governments and organizations propose educating people to help them make smarter decisions about sugar. That includes reducing the consumption and choosing wisely food with less sugar as well as exercising. That is why some regulations put emphasis in creating easy to read and understand labels. However, it is not the case everywhere. For instance, in 2012, Michael Bloomberg, mayor of New York, proposed a limit on soft drink size to prohibit the sale of many sweetened drinks more than 16 ounces. He observed it was out of control and tried to make some adjustments. Although it was initially approved, a New York state judge has knocked down New York City's landmark new ban on big, sugary drinks just one day before it was set to take effect. He based his decision on the liberty of people and that controlling chronic disease was not a reason to rule on these matters. Despite the fact that sugar can become addictive and contribute to chronic disease, it does not mean that it has the same effects of a drug. Studies to prove the addiction effect of sugar are not uniform and conclusive yet. People can get better nutritional education to make smarter choices. There are better alternatives to control the sugar intake that include improving the information in the labels and forcing manufacturers to reduce the addition of sugar in the food. Regulating sugar like drugs can create an effect of wanting to get more of it. According to you, tell me in the comments if we should regulate sugar as drugs or if it is a good idea to label products.